you can manipulate through a very nuanced application of the science in order to make yourself a freaking monster.
You ain't been to the education. You don't realize I'm so frustrated. You ain't got the answer. You ain't got the answer.
Hey guys, Fitness Science here. Now, this idea for this video came because I was doing a video on growth hormone and saunas, and then I thought, actually, I have an idea of 4 anabolic pathways in the body that isn't really spoken about on YouTube very much, but these 4 pathways are very powerful at building muscle, and you can directly manipulate them to increase your gains. So there's like 10,000 videos on YouTube about how to grow muscle using protein, and there's a very good reason for this. It works. Protein is one of the key macronutrients to build muscle, but there are 4 separate pathways, or vectors if you like, that we can manipulate to increase muscle. And yes, protein is probably about 90% of it, but these 4 pathways might be that extra 10% that you need to increase your gains over other people who don't know about these pathways. Looking at these 4 separate pathways of muscle growth in humans is really interesting because it just shows that the protein and anabolism pathway for building skeletal muscle mass and keeping net protein synthesis high is not the only way we can build muscle. So let's get straight into it. The first pathway to know about is the IGF-1 or growth hormone pathway, and manipulating this pathway can be crucial in increasing your muscle mass. This pathway is directly anabolic. Both IGF-1 and growth hormones significantly stimulate 2 key proteins, PI3K and AKT, which both of these proteins, when turned on, directly stimulate mTOR, which is the central mechanism of how our body regulates a lot of things, but for this video, regulates building muscle protein or muscle mass on our body. The short version is that when turned on, mTOR goes and actually creates new muscle cells, and growth hormone significantly turns this pathway on. So you can imagine any way that we can increase IGF-1 and growth hormone levels in the body to turn mTOR on, start creating new muscle cells, is going to lead to a lot of hypertrophy and gains. And this is why knowing about this pathway is really important. And what's a really quick and easy way to spike your growth hormone levels? Saunas. As I spoke about in this video, you can boost your growth hormone levels up to 16 times using saunas. All right, the second pathway is the insulin pathway. Insulin binds to insulin receptors in the body, and again through mTOR can directly stimulate muscle protein synthesis or the creation of new muscle. And by understanding this, you can actually manipulate your diet to grow new muscle and understand that when you boost insulin, you are actually turning on mTOR. How do you do this practically? After a big workout, you can spike your insulin by including carbohydrates with your protein. And now you're hitting mTOR, the regulatory complex, through 2 pathways, both the protein pathway, which is the usual one and spoken about on YouTube thousands of times. I don't need to go into that. But you're also then spiking it through the insulin receptor pathway. About 20 to 40 grams of fast-acting carbohydrates after you work out seems to stimulate insulin maximally over baseline. And this is a great pathway to understand, to manipulate and increase your gains over what you would if you just had protein alone after your workout. And the third vector or pathway, if you like, to understand is the mTOR regulatory complex itself, in particular its timing and its pharmacokinetics. The most important thing to understand about the mTOR pathway when you train is that mTOR is rate limited. What do I mean by this? Basically, you can't just keep ingesting protein and turning it on constantly and creating more muscle every single second. It doesn't work like that. It's rate limited. So if you look at this graph, you can see that above about 30 to 35 grams of protein per meal, mTOR and muscle protein synthesis rates start to flatline. So you can't just keep slamming the protein down thinking that it's going to gain more muscle. And in fact, the other key dynamic to understand about the mTOR complex, it has a refractory period in that once it's maximally stimulated, any more stimulation above that isn't going to increase muscle protein synthesis or muscle growth anymore. So what you're better off doing is, instead of having like a huge protein meal, you're actually better off having short, sharp bursts of protein, about 30 to 35 grams of protein instead of this huge dose of protein. And you're better off splitting it up throughout the day, because then you can stimulate mTOR very systematically and efficiently, rather than trying to slam huge amounts of protein where above about 30 grams of protein doesn't really do anything. So a 60-gram protein shake really has no point. You're just better off having 30 grams, spread that out. About 2 to 3 hours for mTOR seems to be the refractory period. And once that 3 hours is elapsed, you can have another dose of protein to stimulate muscle protein synthesis even more. And understanding the dynamics of this mTOR process is actually crucial because it allows you to manipulate your diet, again, to be basically more efficient. The FOXO pathway is the final pathway to understand to get more muscle growth. And this is sort of an opposite pathway to mTOR. Once the FOXO pathway is turned on, it's actually responsible for muscle breakdown. So keeping it turned off can actually increase hypertrophy. And one key way to keep the FOXO pathway turned off is actually the availability of amino acids, in particular leucine. Leucine, when dosed at about 1 to 3 grams per meal, is enough to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis and keep FOXO turned off, meaning that you are going to grow more than if it is turned on. Basically, you want to include some leucine into each meal if you really want to maximize your muscle growth, because it keeps FOXO turned off and stops its usual role of degrading or breaking down proteins. And again, this is a huge argument for understanding the biochemistry of things in the body when related to training, because it means that you can manipulate these variables to get the maximum amount of efficiency throughout your day and throughout your muscle growth journey. So there you have it, guys. 4 alternate pathways that you might not have heard about to increase your muscle growth above baseline that you can manipulate through a very nuanced application of the science in order to make yourself a freaking monster. And rather than the YouTube videos, which there's nothing inherently wrong with them, but rather than the usual just, eat 1 gram of protein or just slam huge amounts of protein and get huge, this is a bit more of a nuanced approach in order to ensure that when you're in the gym, you're efficient, and when you're outside the gym, you're very effective in building muscle with a more targeted approach. And there are 2 key benefits of understanding the biochemistry in this way. One, it's going to save you money, so you're not shopping in the grocery store getting like 10 million things of protein because you need to slam as much protein as you can and get huge. No, it's a bit more efficient and targeted, so you can just get what you want and target these 4 alternate pathways to get that muscle growth. And the second good reason is it cuts down waste. And I don't mean like financial waste, although that's definitely a consideration. I mean waste products in the body. Slamming huge amounts of protein constantly through many, many years and decades, your kidneys are going to have to process all that protein. So cutting down on waste and being very targeted across these 4 pathways is going to really help your body in terms of not creating huge amounts of waste products over your life. So there you have it, guys. 4 alternate pathways to maximize your muscle growth. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Fitness Doc, I will see you in the next video.